Well, it's that time of year again when two teams battle it out for North American hockey supremacy in the NHL Stanley Cup Final. Few people know the series better than retired referee Bill McCreary, having officiated 15 Stanley Cup Finals, including 11 deciding games. Now he's sharing those insights in a new book. Here to talk about stories from ice level, a great NHL referee tells all, is author Bill McCreary. Welcome.
John, thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
Now, Bill, congratulations on the book, number one. Number two, what made you want to tell all these stories now?
Well, to be quite honest with you, John, I'm a pretty humble person and I never ever anticipated doing something like this. Um, my daughter, who grew up in a hockey household, obviously, and followed my career very closely, always encouraged me to tell my stories, and she thought other people should hear them. And Rob Simpson, who's the author of the book, just did a fantastic job. When Rob and I connected, he flew to my house here in Thornbury, Ontario, and we sat in our backyard and just gossiped and told hockey stories, and it just took off from there. So Rob did a great job for me.
Now, a bit of a Vancouver connection to the start of the book. I understand this all began with a conversation you and Rob had in the Canucks press box some years ago.
That's exactly right. Rob had worked on and authored Ray Scampanella's book quite a few years ago, and he was interested in doing this. So it was something that we talked about a lot. I finally gave in and said, "Okay, let's give it a try," and here we are today.
All right. Now, digging into the book here, you were part of many of the most important and indeed most controversial matches of the past 40 years. Which games do you get asked about the most even now?
Well, one of the constant questions I always receive is, you work gold medal games and you work Stanley Cup Finals. Which is harder? Which is more important? And it's totally a different. It's a great question, by the way, but it's 100% different. 1998 in Nagano, um, I had the privilege of being selected to work the gold medal game between the Czechs and Russians. I didn't know the history behind the countries and the hatred that carried over to the ice. Back in 1998, the European athletes, their gold medal was their Stanley Cup. So it's hard for people to understand that, but that's 28 years ago. And so I learned real quickly how I had to control that game from possible chaos in the first period to a hockey game in the second and third. That being said, when you're assigned the gold medal game, it's the importance of two countries playing one another. However, for me, it's the red team against the blue team, or white team against the red team. It's 40 professional athletes that I work with each and every night in the National League. Obviously, that I don't want to make a mistake or embarrass myself going back to work with these people professionally. So um, that's the Olympics. The Stanley Cup side, there's nothing greater than to be assigned a game seven in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's the only game in the world that's being played, and it's a one game knockout. It's a fantastic experience. It's anybody who ever has had the opportunity or gets it in the future will Bill absolutely agree with me 100%. It's the greatest experience in all time.
Now, you mentioned a gold medal game. There's another gold medal game that comes to mind, of course, and you may know where I'm going with this. The Sidney Crosby Golden Goal game here in Vancouver in 2010. What do you remember about that game and your particular role in it?
Well, the game was fantastic. First of all, it was the first gold medal game that two referees were used. The first two I worked was a single referee, so it was working with someone familiar like Dan O'Halloran. Dan and I had worked many games together in the National Hockey League, so that made it much easier as far as the acceptance level on the ice. Before the golden goal, as they call it, Joe. Everybody forgets Joe Pavelski had a scoring chance that the U.S. wins the gold medal, probably less than a minute before the final goal, and Roberto makes a big save, and the play goes back down the other end, and some players change, and the two defensemen for the U.S. team, absolutely great hockey players, fabulous guys, Suter and Brian Rafalski, had logged so much ice time, they were completely wore out. And it just seemed that every little situation that happened between the players on the ice at that time, Crosby and Iginla and Niedermayer were able to beat the other three from the other team to the puck all the time. And when the puck was rimmed around the boards, it was coming very slowly, and it touched the toe of my skate. It would not have gone outside the blue line from where I was standing. However, Crosby regained possession of the puck and to Iginla in the corner, to Crosby in front of the net, and we all know what happened. The ironic part of this whole story, and what people probably no one knows other than the people who have asked me during these interviews, is that the next morning my wife and daughter and I were flying on Air Canada back home to Toronto, and with the conclusion of the gold medal game, and Brian Burke was in the Air Canada lounge, and he walked right over to the table and said, "Hey Billy, that was a hell of a game, a hell of a job." So when the loser of a team that's in charge of that team, and the emotions that were involved in that game between the two countries, takes the time unsolicited to do something like that, that first of all, it tells me what a man the gentleman is, and number two, what a professional he is. So that's the story on that.
Now, I have to ask this question because my brother and my nephew are longtime Buffalo Sabres fans. So the skate in the crease goal during the '99 Cup Final between the Stars and the Sabres, what happened there?
Well, obviously, I was the neutral zone referee, and I was working with Terry Gregson, and he was the end zone referee. And of course, in real time, things happen fast, as we all know. And there had been a goal scored, I believe it was the first round or the second round, where Matt Sundin carried the puck for the Toronto Maple Leafs around the visitor's net, and his one skate entered the blue, and he continued on and scored. So there had been a goal in the playoffs allowed, so a precedent had been set regards to the rule of, I'll call it the big toe in the crease. With Hull, it's an interesting scenario. As you know, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2014, along with Dominic Hasek being one of the other members inducted. And we were sitting enjoying an adult beverage of the weekend of the induction. And I said to Dom, I said, "I have to ask you about the goal." And he said, "Stop right there." He said, "It had nothing to do with you guys." He said, "If you look at my positioning, I was totally wrong." He said, "My ass was back on the goal line, should have been out at the top of the crease." He said, "The goal would have never happened if I'd played my position properly." That doesn't excuse what happened. The fact of the matter, I don't know if anybody could ever measure it. Brett Hull's, gosh, I don't know. When you see the replays, there's very not much of a skate in the crease. Has no bearing on the goal being scored. The video goal judge that night was Brian Lewis. He deemed it a good goal, and it ended with, of course, much chaos on Buffalo's side. But I couldn't help my partner. I'm 100 feet away from the actual play. You can't tell depth perception from out there. I knew he was very close. Whether he was in or not, I couldn't help Terry. And so it was unfortunate, but I guess it's an awful way to say it, but that's hockey.
That's hockey. All right. As mentioned off the top, the Stanley Cup Final is underway. We are speaking on the Tuesday morning, hours before Game 1 between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes. What advice would you have for the referees officiating this series, or really any Stanley Cup Final?
Well, John, first of all, officials get accused of changing how they call the game in the playoffs, and that is 100% wrong, because obviously people who say that don't understand the game and or never officiate it. And I'm not defending the officials, because they'll make mistakes. They'll make mistakes in game 1, game 4, game 5. We're humans. We all put on our pants one leg at a time. The players are going to make hundreds of mistakes. The coaches will make mistakes. It's how you mask your mistakes and don't repeat them is what's the important thing. Number 2, let the players decide how they want to play. If they just want to play like men, treat them like men. You obviously call the egregious cross-check. There seems to be a lot of high sticking in these playoffs. I've never seen so many high sticking calls in my life, and I don't know if they're all careless or if it's players just not respecting their opponents anymore. In the old days, John, there were players and referees like myself. We never wore helmets, and if a player high-sticked another player, honestly, the first thing they did was go and apologize. Nowadays, it's almost like it doesn't matter. They don't care. I don't know if that's true because I don't know the players personally, but it gives off that perception when you're watching TV. And obviously, I'll be glued to it tonight. I love it, and I wish all the officials who were selected well. But the key is game one. You have to set the standard as well. So if players are going to take advantage of going to the crease and run into the goalie and not allow him to play his position, you have to set the standard for the series and call a penalty. So it's a hard game to referee, but if the players play like men, like I said, you can treat them like men.
So there isn't a situation in the playoffs where you let them play or you call fewer things than you would in, say, game 40 in the regular season.
No, I think, again, and maybe I didn't mention this, but something that's really overlooked is that there's a lot of talk about playing with discipline from the coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, everybody in the organization, captains. They're all talking to one another all day long about discipline and not taking needless penalties. When you watch some of the last series, players taking penalties 120 feet away from their end zone, in the attacking zone, needless penalties, lazy penalties, slashing penalties where another stride or two eliminates the slash. So it's very, very important because of the power plays that are so important in a hockey game that can win or lose you a game. So it's up to the players to discipline themselves. They do play differently in the playoffs. There'll be a lot of emotion. So it's more about controlling those emotions and communicating than putting your arm in the air and blowing your whistle.
What's the best thing a referee can do during the final, and what's the worst?
Well, I think the best thing is communicating. I think that's the number one thing you should have in your mind to communicate to the players. There's lots of times where a small amount of communication can eliminate putting your arm in the air to call a penalty. The worst thing to do would be to ignore the players or coaches and act like the game is about you because it's not about you. You're out there to keep the game fair and safe. And if you do that, you're probably going to be very successful if you come out of the game unnoticed. Um, Ignorance is not acceptable. So when you think the game is about you, that's when you shouldn't be out there. Fans buy tickets to see the players, not the officials.
We talked about the 99 Cup final, of course. What would you say is your most memorable or favorite Stanley Cup series to have officiated?
Well, I honestly don't know how many game sevens I refereed, but I know three of them for sure. And the players in game sevens, when there's a game six, there always can be another game, right? So one team can be a little reckless, and that can be a little trying during the game, depending on emotions again. Game sevens, there is no tomorrow, as we all know. So I would say 95% of the time, the players are very cautious. That doesn't mean they don't play hard, but they don't take that extra little step, punch, high elbow, charge. If you keep them on edge and they don't know what you're doing, you're probably going to be very successful.
Now, you retired in 2011, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2014, and for the last couple of years, you've been working with the PWHL as an advisor and a member of their discipline committee. What have you learned so far from that experience?
Well, first of all, John, I'll be the first to admit I was very ignorant of women's hockey, not following it, not acknowledging it until 1998. And when we were in Japan, we were staying in the same hotel as all of the officials for the tournament, the women officials. So it was interesting talking to them, sharing stories, sitting with them, having breakfast or lunch, and then going to some of their games. And when I went to the gold medal game, it really opened my eyes to the talent level of the women. Now, in 98, as we all know, it was the US team and the Canada team that were, one and two and remained that way for about 10 years. But now the countries are starting to catch up and the talent level is spread out, of course. And that being said, a lot of those European players are over playing in the PWHL, which is a fabulous league. I'm honored to be a part of it. It's the skill set of the women, the skating, the shooting, the passing, the passion that is there is incredible. and they all love the physicality. So it's got everything that a fan would ask for. Um, and the people who put a negative spin on it are people that don't follow the game very closely. You can't compare, you know, Poulin and you can't compare her to Mark Stone in Vegas. I mean, we're not comparing apples to apples, right? I mean, we're talking about 100 and I don't know, 30-pound lady to a 200-pound man. So naturally, the Stoner is going to have stronger wrists, stronger arms, stronger shoulders, going to shoot the puck harder. But that doesn't mean from an entertainment perspective, Poulin doesn't do all of those things just as well at her level. So I think people who want to compare have to step back and compare it properly.
Now, you talk about some of the differences between the women's game and the NHL game. One thing I found interesting was the way was the jailbreak rule, for instance, when someone's on a power play, or sorry, someone's playing shorthanded and they score a goal, that automatically frees the person serving the penalty. And you seem to argue that this may be something interesting for the NHL to adopt.
Well, I don't know if they ever will, but I'll tell you, it's a really interesting rule. It's exciting because it forces the team with the man advantage to be careful. Um, Obviously, you see the excitement in the team that scores shorthanded, and it's a reward. I mean, they're playing a man short, and you know what? I think it's a great rule. I really do. It's like saying, you're playing shorthanded for the first 40 seconds, sir, but you just scored a goal. Here's your reward, and I'm sorry about the team with the power play. Here's for being careless and allowing that player to get loose to score the goal. So it's usually an interception of a pass. It's usually a block shot, that type of thing, and ends up in a 2-on-1 or a breakaway situation. So it's really exciting for the game.
Now the other one that you mentioned in the book is the way the PWHL awards points for games, and as in international hockey, I believe it's 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for a shootout or an OT win, and 1 point for a loss, which of course is different from how the NHL does it. What would be the effect if the NHL suddenly adopted this?
Well, John, I've had an opportunity now to be involved with the PW for 2 years, and when you watch the schedule unwind, both years it's come right down to the last day, and it involved Ottawa both times. And to me, when something like that can happen, what a great way to present an entertainment package that the fans can be glued in right to the last minute, as opposed to saying in December they're never going to make the playoffs, right? We don't. In my 2 years, that experience has not happened. I don't see it happening in the future. It's going to be interesting with 12 teams this year, but I think over the next few days in all the different phases of the draft, I think you're still going to see a lot of teams with a lot of skills. So, can the NHL do it? I'm not sure they're interested. Mr. Bettman's an interesting gentleman with his committees. I got a lot of respect for him. He's a very intelligent man. He's done nothing but good things for the league, and he's made people a lot of money. So we'll have to see where he goes.
All right, Bill, what do you hope people get out of the book?
Well, I just want people to understand that things do happen underneath the stands, if you will, at the Zamboni level, where a lot of the referee rooms are, meeting presidents, having the opportunity to meet the chimpanzee was involved in the movie for Disney. There's just little things that take place down on the bowels of the arena and out on the ice surface with players, with coaches. There's a lot of things said that hot mics or mics don't pick up. And it was an interesting time for me in my life to spend almost 3 full decades out there with so many superstars. And it doesn't matter if they were superstars or not, people who had roles to play. And I really enjoyed, and I was very privileged to be on the ice with all those players for that many years.
Do you miss it?
Absolutely. I wish I wasn't as fat. I wish I wasn't as old. And because of those two things, I'm a hell of a lot slower when I put my skates on. So I really miss it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a fine place to leave it. The name of the book is Stories from Ice Level, a great NHL referee tells all. It is published by Douglas and McIntyre. My thanks to co-author Bill McCreary.
John, thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time.